Vought calls it a defense satellite. The internal memo calls it something else, a surveillance grid with a heartbeat built to track Supa's dissidents and children who never signed anything. The launch site sits on the Florida coast, ringed by cameras and flags. A stage has been built for the occasion, draped in red and blue, facing a crowd of reporters who were handed their questions an hour ago. Homelander stands at the podium in his Navy suit cape, catching the wind like it was paid to. He talks about order. He talks about safety. He does not talk about the sealed wing beneath the launch tower, where files on Compound 5 trials sit next to photographs of children who have not been told they are property. Sister Sage watches from the control room, arms folded, eyes on 4 monitors instead of 1 man. Firecracker broadcasts from a platform near the fence, feeding the crowd lines designed to trend. The Deep poses near the shoreline for a photographer who stopped caring an hour ago. Black Noir stands motionless by the tower, a shape more than a person. Underneath the spectacle, 3 of the boys move through a service corridor, pulling data from a terminal nobody thought to guard well enough. Huey's hands shake around the drive. Starlight watches the door. What they find is not a defense system. It is a leash with a rocket attached. The countdown reaches its final seconds. The sky tears open above the gantry. A body falls through the rupture and drives straight into the rocket's second stage, punching a hole clean through the fuel casing. The structure buckles, groans, and comes apart in a wall of fire that swallows the launch tower whole. Metal rains down over 300 yards of scorched concrete. Mark stands up out of the wreckage before the smoke even clears. He does not know what Vought is yet. He does not know who Homelander is. He knows there are people screaming under twisted steel, and that is enough. He moves. A collapsed gantry pins 4 engineers against a support beam. Mark lifts it off them with 1 hand and sets it down somewhere it can't hurt anyone else. A fuel tank rolls loose near a cluster of technicians, hissing seconds from catching. He grabs it, carries it out past the perimeter fence, and throws it into open water before it detonates. A support column drops toward a fire crew. He catches it mid-fall and redirects it into the sea. He works through the wreckage in seconds, not minutes, hauling bodies clear of debris the size of cars, checking pulses, moving to the next person before the last one finishes coughing. Every camera on that stage turns with him. Homelander stands frozen at the podium, mouth still open around a word no one is listening to anymore. For the first time since Vought built him into a name, the lens has found someone else, and it isn't letting go. Homelander lands in front of Mark before the smoke has finished settling, cape snapping into place like it rehearsed the entry. He asks who let a stranger drop out of orbit and steal his headline. He calls it an invasion. He waits for the fear that usually comes next. Mark isn't interested in the performance. He wants to know why a national defense project has files on children, why there's a compound stockpiled under the launch tower with a kill switch built into it, and why a boy named Ryan has a folder marked for relocation. Homelander doesn't answer. He's already decided the conversation is over. Heat vision cuts across the wreckage and hits Mark square in the back. The suit scorches along one shoulder, a black line through gold and blue. The skin underneath doesn't register it at all. Homelander blinks. That's new. He closes the distance, fast fist already cocked the way it's worked on every threat that ever stood in front of him. Mark sidesteps, half a foot, catches the incoming wrist, and drives 1 punch into his stomach. The impact doesn't stop at Homelander. It carries him through the support tower behind him, through 2 feet of reinforced concrete out the far side, and down onto the sand 300 yards off, where he skids to a stop against a lifeguard station that was empty an hour ago. There is no exchange, no second round. Just a man in a flag-colored suit lying in the wreckage of his own launch site, wondering for the first time in years what it feels like to lose. Mark doesn't follow him down. There are still people trapped in the wreckage behind him, and that matters more than finishing what Homelander started. Sister Sage takes control of the crisis before Homelander finishes standing up. She doesn't waste time on outrage. She already knows brute force lost the moment Mark hit the tower, so she moves to the only weapon Vought has ever needed the story. Within minutes, the footage changes. The rescue clips are pulled from every outgoing feed. What airs instead is the impact, the fire, the launch tower folding in on itself framed as an attack instead of an accident. Firecracker takes the new narrative and runs screaming into her camera that a creature fell from the sky to steal children and gun down an American hero. Sage activates 2 protocols in the same breath. The first moves the test children out of the facility through a route built years ago for exactly this failure. The second pulls Ryan off-site through a separate private channel, away from cameras, away from crowds, away from both Homelander and whatever just crashed into Florida. A-Train gets the order to run Ryan to safety personally. He's halfway there when he passes a loading dock where 3 children are being herded onto a transport like cargo. One of them calls him a hero on the way past, voice cracking with fear instead of admiration. He stops. The order to move Ryan gets dropped somewhere between that voice and the next second. A-Train peels off toward the children instead, leaving Ryan's extraction to the security detail already assigned to it. Ryan is still accounted for. He's just no longer A-Train's problem. Sage clocks the deviation through a dozen camera feeds and files it away without comment. One asset improvising isn't a crisis. It's a rounding error as long as the bigger machine keeps running. Sage sends the rest of the 7 in not to win, but to buy minutes. Every second Mark spends fighting is a second Ryan gets further away. The Deep reads it as his shot at relevance again. He wades into the surf and calls up everything nearby that can swim, sending a wall of displaced water and startled marine life crashing toward the wreckage. Mark does not fight the wave. He uses his speed to shove the water sideways and push the animals clear before they are caught in the blast radius, then closes the distance and throws the Deep bodily into an empty rescue boat bobbing offshore. The boat rocks. The Deep does not get up right away. Black Noir comes from the smoke without a sound blade, already moving coated in something that is not meant to heal. The knife meets Mark's shoulder and snaps at the hilt. One return hit sends Noir through the fuselage of a grounded transport plane, and he does not move again. Firecracker never gets close. She works the crowd instead, feeding a live broadcast that pushes armed guards toward a residential block 2 miles out, insisting the enemy is hiding among civilians. Mark tears the broadcast rig off its mount, catches the back of her jacket, and drops her into the mud in front of the same camera she has been shouting into for the last 10 minutes. A-Train does not fight at all anymore. He's 3 blocks over, running kids to a triage tent faster than Vought's own evacuation plan accounted for. Through all of it, Mark does not lose the thread. Starlight's stolen files already told him what Cradle Protocol moves and where. A radio intercept Huey picked up minutes ago confirms Ryan is off the launch site, entirely routed somewhere Vought has not bothered naming yet. Mark is not guessing. He is working like a soldier on a battlefield. Confirmed information, immediate action. The 7's delay buys Vought exactly as much time as expected, and not 1 second more. The field hospital sits half a mile from the wreckage tents. Strung between ambulances, the air thick with antiseptic and diesel. Mark finds the boys there instead of the other way around. Starlight hands him a tablet loaded with everything she pulled before the servers went dark. A list of children logged by number instead of name. Ryan's extraction file blueprints for a project that was never about defense and shipping manifests for Compound 5, the drug that turns people into weapons, whether they ask for it or not. Mark reads through it, standing in the middle of a triage tent, surrounded by burned victims and cracked ribs that Vought's press release will never mention. He has seen this shape before on a much larger scale, wearing a different flag. Children made into assets. Strength turned into a leash. Butcher lays out his plan without dressing it up. Use Mark as the blunt instrument. He clearly has put Homelander down permanently and let every other soupy watching learn exactly what happens to the next one who steps out of line. Mark turns him down flat. No hesitation in it. Butcher pushes back, calling it soft, calling it the kind of hesitation that gets people killed later instead of now. Mark's answer does not come as a speech. He simply states that ending Homelander was never the hard part. The hard part is not becoming him in the process, and that is not a line he is willing to cross for anyone's convenience, Butcher's included. Huey is the one who says the obvious out loud, pointing out what the footage already proved, before Vought buried it. Mark saved people, real ones, while Vought lied about him doing the opposite. Mother's Milk says nothing yet, arms crossed, watching Mark work instead of listening to him talk. When a medic calls for help, he moves before anyone asks. Kimiko and Starlight are already moving toward the next tent, more interested in getting kids stabilized than in relitigating philosophy. By the time Mark leaves the hospital, his objectives are set. Intercept Cradle Protocol and get the children out. Find Ryan before Homelander does gut Project Skyfather at the root and end Homelander permanently if he keeps putting civilians or Ryan in the line of fire. He is not staying to fight a war. He is staying because Vought built one first. The train rolls north out of Florida under the label of a relief convoy. Medical crosses stenciled on cars that were never meant to carry anything close to relief. Inside the cargo is children fitted with collars, wired to detonate, guarded by Vought security, and doctors who stopped asking questions somewhere around their second contract renewal. Sage has turned the train into a trap built entirely out of restraint. Hit it too hard, and the collars kill the kids inside. Hold back, and Vought gets them to the next facility, resets the files, starts over somewhere Mark has not found yet. He does not take the bait, either way. Flying parallel to the tracks, he peels the cars apart, one at a time, uncoupling them without so much as tipping a single seat. He strips the detonator packages off the collar housing mid-flight, hurls the whole cluster skyward, and lets it go off high enough that the blast becomes a flash and nothing more. When a guard panics and opens fire into a packed car, Mark catches 3 rounds out of the air before they reach anyone. Close enough that the children hear the shots after the bullets are already in his fist. Kimiko is already inside, moving through the corridor, car by car, putting down armed escorts before they finish reaching for a second magazine. Starlight works behind her, prying collars loose and guiding children toward the opening. Mark tore in the side of the car. A-Train runs kids to the tree line and bursts too fast to track back for the next group before the dust settles from the last run. Mother's Milk holds the perimeter, calling out head counts, making sure nobody gets left behind in the chaos of a train that has stopped being a train. Huey stays on comms the entire time, feeding Mark live updates, pulled off the Vought frequency he has been quietly tapping since the launch site, car counts, guard positions, and confirmation that Ryan never boarded this train at all. He has already been moved through a different channel, one Vought set up specifically to keep him away from both Mark and Homelander until things settle. Vought throws its last line of defense at the stalled convoy, a squad of lab-grade soups built for exactly this kind of containment. Against most of the people in this world, they would be a massacre waiting to happen. Against Mark, they are a formality. He puts them down fast, careful, with anyone clearly being forced into the fight, considerably less careful with the handlers, still trying to trigger a collar from a safe distance. By the time the last car goes quiet, every child is off the train. Every collar is disarmed, and Cradle Protocol has failed in every measurable way Vought planned for. Somewhere in a command room miles away, Homelander finally gets the one piece of information Sage was trying to keep from him, where Ryan actually is. Ryan has been sitting in a safe house for 3 hours, watched by a security detail that answers to Sage and nobody else. She wants him kept away from both Mark and Homelander until the situation stabilizes, treating him less like a child and more like the last asset Vought cannot afford to lose twice. Homelander does not accept being cut out of that decision. He flies to the safe house himself, brushes past the detail without slowing down, and pulls Ryan out through a side door before anyone there can do more than reach for a radio. Sage tries to reach him over comms. He kills the channel mid-sentence. He takes Ryan to an abandoned military base in the South Atlantic, a leftover Vought testing site still stocked with old anti-soup hardware, and a secondary Skyfather data vault nobody has cleared out yet. He goes live from the ruins Ryan planted at his side and calls the boy the future of the country in front of a camera feed already looping on every major network. Mark reaches the island faster than anyone expected. He does not waste the arrival on a confrontation. He gets Ryan clear first, moving before Homelander can process that the camera no longer has him. Homelander lunges to cut him off. Mark is already faster, already past him, already handing Ryan to Starlight and A-Train. His instruction is one word: away. A-Train has Ryan off the island in under 10 seconds. Watching him go breaks whatever control Homelander had left. He tries to chase the extraction, screaming that Ryan belongs to him, that no one gets to take what is his. Mark cuts him off midair, blocking the path outright. Homelander fires a heat blast toward the departing rescue boat, wide and desperate, the kind of shot that is not aimed so much as thrown. Mark shoves the beam off course into open sky, then drives one hit into Homelander's chest that sends him straight down through 3 floors of old concrete and into the bunker level below. There is no more room for negotiation after that. Whatever conversation might have happened ends the moment that beam left his hand, aimed at a boat full of children. Vought throws whatever's left at the base, not because Sage believes it will hold, but because every minute bought is another minute to wipe the vault and pull command off the island before it becomes a liability instead of an asset. The defenses are real, even if the outcome isn't in doubt. Mercenaries hold the perimeter in hardened position. Loyalist soups take the upper floors. Drones swarm the airspace in tight formations, feeding targeting data to artillery batteries buried under camouflage netting since the base went dark years ago. None of it does what it's built to do. Small arms fire bounces off Mark without slowing his stride. Missiles tear his sleeve and nothing underneath it. The artillery batteries get torn out of their mounts and thrown into the surf, 2 at a time, still smoking. A sonic emitter buried near the command bunker catches him off guard, a wall of frequency that drops him to one knee, ears ringing, vision blurring at the edges for a single disorienting second. 1 second is all it costs him. Concrete out of the nearest wall and drives it straight through the emitter tower. The frequency dies with it. Drones get shredded mid-air. An armored transport goes into the ocean end over end. Loyalist soups drop one after another, most unconscious, before they finish drawing a weapon. A missile aimed at the rescue boat gets intercepted, with his own body absorbing the blast rather than letting it reach the water. Min takes the opening to strike again and gets driven straight through the bunker roof, for it coming out the other side in worse shape than he went in. By the time the dust settles, Homelander is barely upright, blood at his mouth. Cape torn half off one shoulder, every ounce of certainty that used to carry him through a fight gone somewhere between the sonic tower and the bunker. Before Mark can close the distance and finish it, Sage triggers the one move she's had in reserve since the launch site went up in flames. Sage does not believe she can kill Mark. She has passed that math entirely. What she needs is 30 seconds of him gone from the island, long enough to torch the last of the vault and get the command staff off-site before it becomes evidence instead of an asset. She triggers what is left of Project Skyfather in low orbit, breaking apart the remaining hardware into pieces large enough to level city blocks on re-entry. Within a minute, 3 major coastal cities are tracking debris on radar, and Vaught's emergency feed is already looping a story that blames the falling wreckage on the very man standing in the ruins of the base Vaught just tried to kill him in. Mark does not weigh the trap. He is already moving before the broadcast finishes its first sentence. He clears the atmosphere in under a minute, closing on the debris field, while it is still glowing from re-entry heat. The largest chunks get shattered before they get anywhere near the cities below, fragments burning out harmlessly high above cloud cover. A module the size of a city bus gets shoved off its trajectory and driven down into open ocean instead of a residential district. Smaller pieces get hammered apart one by one, turned into nothing more than a light show over 3 coastlines that spent the last hour bracing for impact. The entire operation takes less time than it takes Homelander to crawl out from under the bunker roof. Phones catch it from the ground. News helicopters catch it from a distance. Traffic cameras, home security feeds, airport radar. All of it lines up into the same picture at the same time. A man tearing apart falling debris to keep it off people who have no idea who he is yet. Vaught's broadcast keeps insisting he caused the disaster. Nobody watching believes it anymore. The footage does not need commentary. It just needs to keep playing. The lie does not collapse because Mark argues with it. It collapses because the truth is too large to edit around. Homelander does not heal while Mark is gone. There is no second wind waiting for him under that bunker roof. No reserve of strength he has been saving for exactly this moment. He drags himself out of the rubble, bleeding, breathing wrong, one wing of his cape torn loose and dragging in the dirt behind him. A surviving monitor in the wrecked command room shows him the one thing that still matters: a rescue boat pulling away from the island with Ryan and a dozen children aboard, already too far out for anything except flight. He does not process it as a father losing a son. He processes it the way anyone processes property, walking out the door shore without permission. He launches after the boat anyway, his flight unsteady, blood marking the rocks and twisted metal he pushes off from. He is not fast. He is not precise. He is running on the kind of desperation that used to be confidence before tonight. Mark is back on the island before Homelander clears the shoreline, cutting off the flight path before it starts. The timing matters. Mark has not been gone long enough for a recovery, just long enough for Homelander to mistake movement for strength. Homelander tries to route around him toward open water, insisting Ryan belongs to him and no one else. Mark does not step aside. He states it plainly. Instead, Ryan is a child, not property. And that conversation ended the moment a heat blast got aimed at a boat full of them. Homelander answers with one more shot anyway. Wild, ugly, and still pointed toward the waterline. Mark does not warn him a second time. He closes the distance, drives him down through the island's bedrock, through an old testing tunnel, through the still burning remains of the base's Skyfather relay. Homelander fights back on the way down, but there is nothing left in it that changes the outcome. It ends fast, and it ends without theater. No monologue, no drawn-out finish, no performance for a camera that is not rolling anymore. He does not die like a rival who came close. He dies like a bully who finally ran into someone he could not outshout. Mark does not leave once Homelander is gone. There is still a system standing behind him, and a system does not fall just because its mascot did. He spends the next few hours tearing through what is left of Vought's infrastructure, a data center feeding backups to 3 different continents, a compound Vive stockpile large enough to arm a small army, a shipping route built to move product without customs. Ever asking what the product was, a handful of holding sites still listing children as inventory instead of people. He does not level the surrounding blocks doing it. He goes after the parts built specifically to keep this machine running and leaves the rest standing. Starlight Mother's Milk. Kimiko and A-Train work the ground level, pulling children out of holding sites and getting them to people who will actually feed them instead of file them. Huey pushes every piece of evidence he has been sitting on out to every outlet still willing to run it. Starlight goes on record, confirming what the files say. A-Train does the same, publicly naming the orders he was given on a live feed. Vought cannot cut fast enough. Sage is not among the people accounted for by morning. She got out, ahead of the collapse, with a partial backup of the data, choosing to survive a losing system rather than die defending one. Vought loses its figurehead, its flagship project, most of its stockpile, a dozen black sites, and control of its own narrative in under 20 hours. What is left standing is bruised, not buried. Butcher finds Mark before he leaves, still unwilling to call any of this trust, framing it instead as one useful soup who happened to do the job right this once. Mark does not argue the point. He tells Butcher plainly not to trust power itself, but to watch closely what people actually do with it. Ryan watches from a distance as Mark prepares to go, taking in a version of strength that never once asked to be worshipped for it. By morning, Mark is gone, not because the world is fixed, because the part of it built to swallow it whole just got its spine broken, and everyone left standing finally has room to take back the rest for themselves,